Can you do, can you do me a favor? Can you look in the camera and say like, comment, and subscribe?
Like, comment.
Like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. So to my grandson's channel. Say like, comment, and subscribe to my grandson's channel.
Like, comment, and subscribe to my grandson's channel.
You heard it. Okay, welcome back to If I Knew Then. Today we have my friend Ben Hughes. He is a solution engineer at Salesforce. Ben and I met playing basketball, actually, so we've played basketball together now for a little, probably over a year or so, in multiple places. And our daughters played soccer together too, which was cool.
That's right.
So I'm excited to have you on today. Thank you for doing this. I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you before we get started.
Yeah, it sounds great. First off, thanks for having me. Really do appreciate it. My name is Ben Hughes. I was born in Doylestown, so grew up in the Philly area. Went to school up in Boston at Northeastern and sort of stumbled through a college education with mathematics, not really sure where I wanted to go from there, but ultimately stayed up in Boston and ended up sort of falling into this career in telecommunications software sales, which is a very specific niche, didn't know existed. Stayed in Boston for a couple of years, but I've moved back and now I live in Newtown in the Philly suburbs for the last 7 or 8 years or so. I've been here with my wife. So I have a wife, a 3-year-old daughter, and yeah, like Anthony mentioned, play a lot of basketball, like playing drums, music, playing bar gigs around the area. So it's kind of my thing outside of work.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I forgot that you went to Northeastern. Did you do the 3 co-op cycle?
Yes, that is. It was between Drexel and Northeastern for me, honestly, when I was picking school because the co-op program was so enticing. I left high school with no idea at all what to do. Like had dreams of playing in bands, but like couldn't hack it. Knew that wasn't going to cut the mustard. So I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I saw Drexel first, frankly. So their co-op program first and was like, man, that sounds awesome. Just seems like a great way to earn some money and figure out, even if it's process of elimination, what don't I want to do? And then visited Northeastern, kind of saw that was a I don't want to say sister program, but the same modeled in the same way, obviously, same sort of co-op setup and structure. So that was absolutely like the key factor. Like I loved the campus and loved the school in the city, but really I was down to those 2 schools for me because I felt like I needed co-ops and ended up at Northeastern. Yeah.
That's awesome. I was similar. So I went to Drexel. I credit Drexel's co-op system with my success in my career or whatever if you would call that success, because I honestly, similar to you, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought that I was going to go in a certain path. I was good at math, but I knew I wanted to do business. So I just majored in finance. And the exact same thing with me was a process of elimination. I figured out the things I don't like as much as the things I did like. So I absolutely loved it. My 3rd co-op, I ended up getting a full-time job there, and I spent over 10 years there before I moved to my current role. So
that's amazing.
I'm curious, what were your co-ops like? How did you end up into this space?
Yeah. First off, I'll echo what you said. I 100% credit that program for getting me to where I am now. It was sort of an indirect winding path, but I just don't think I would have gotten hired there if not for some of the co-op experience. But yeah, I started. So again, I was a math major. I was, like good at math and wanted something that was vaguely technical, but didn't want to do all the homework that engineers had to do. I was like, I'll pick something that's flexible. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go down, like all these things were floating in my head, like teaching, being an actuary, tutoring. I thought, could I go into some sort of bio? Like, I don't know, but I thought math would be flexible enough that you could sort of make your way into some different areas and then figure it out from there. But my first co-op was at John Hancock as an actuary, insurance underwriting, basically. I can be honest, I hated it, really hated it. I had a good group of guys that I worked with, but it just wasn't for me. And mostly, like if you can tell from my homework comment earlier, I didn't want to go into a career where you're required to do a bunch of certifications and like pass exams and basically spend the next decade of your life like still testing and passing these various levels of certs. And that was like the first thing they told us as an actuary. They're like, well, if you stay here, you're going to need to pass 7 levels of exams and then 3 more. I was like, I'm not, I remember distinctly like a flashbulb memory talking to this guy and John Hancock. And I was like, what's your schedule like? He was probably late 20s, maybe like pushing 30 and had been there for 6 or 7 years. He was like, well, I come here and then I go home and I study for 5 hours and I go to bed. And I was just like, no way. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no way. It was too much in terms of the rigor that they play. So that was pretty easy for me to eliminate. And then from there, my second co-op was my favorite one, but not one that kind of was sustainable for like monetary reasons, honestly. So I was a tutor at this place called Mathnasium. They're
Okay.
actually around here now as well. I've seen some in Doylestown, but it's a chain math tutoring center. Like they're all over the country and they range anywhere from kindergartners up to like high school kids prepping for the SATs. And I loved that job. So it was very fun. That was like my dipping my toe into teaching. I mentioned earlier, I was wondering if I wanted to be a high school math teacher or something like that. I thought, well, let's give this a try and work with kids. And I did really enjoy it. It's probably the only job I've ever had where you clock in and I like had, you have no distractions until you clock out. Like every other job I've had is very like you're working, but you have to check your phone or you're pulled in
Yeah.
different directions. Like that was like you're there. I'm completely focused on teaching kids and then you leave 6 hours later. Like you never checked your phone, you never looked at a clock or anything. So it was very rewarding in that way. But it's very low paying. There wasn't a lot of like opportunity for moving up or doing anything different. It's just kind of like you tutor kids. And I also sort of taught me in terms of process of elimination that I don't think I'm cut out for actual school teaching because I remember you could have between 1 and 4 kids in your group and 4 felt like a lot. And I was like, man, teachers have 30. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
could deal with 30. So I remember just feeling like this is fun, but it's also like very short, focused hours. The parents are there, like it's voluntary. So people wanted to be there more than felt like they had to. So it was very different energy than school. And I stuck around there for like another year after my co-op ended, like just kept working there for my part-time job, but wasn't sustainable long term. And then my last co-op, I ended up at a company called Power Advocate in the financial district of Boston, like very small niche software company. I don't even really know how I found that one. It was just part of the career database and the co-op database. They really specific company. They sold big management software for construction projects. So basically um, helped construction workers and contractors submit their bids for large construction projects through this automated software. I was like a tech support guy there, like answering phone calls, helping people log in who forgot their password, like that kind of thing, like truly level one tech support. I enjoyed it. I won't say I was like deeply passionate about it, but it kind of got my foot in the door of software. So I do think that was the role that sort of pushed me in the direction that I ended up afterwards. But I just rambled. So let me know if you have questions on any of
No,
those
no.
experiences.
I love that. That's really cool. I mean, I feel like I had a similar journey. I ended up in a place I had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
It's funny, the actuary comment resonated with me. I've worked in employee benefits now for quite a while, and when I first started, I was super into the underwriting piece and understanding how we came up with the premiums and what level of influence we had over it. I work in something very niche called captives, and so I thought like, oh, might be a skill that's useful for me. And my manager at the time was an actuary. He was
Yeah.
like, I highly recommend against it. I wouldn't do it if I had to choose again. I wouldn't do this. And so I've been on the employee benefits side of it or the client side of it now, but it's good to have that base understanding. So that comment resonated with me, but the journey's really cool. I felt very similar. I found things I liked, things I didn't like, things that I was passionate about, but then also wanted to try something different. And that's where I got with my last co-op. So, all right. So you tried something completely different. You went into
Yeah.
the software piece, and
Yeah.
then ultimately that's what landed you, or not, that's not what landed this for you, but it opened up the door. You found something that you enjoyed
Yeah.
doing. So tell me about how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, totally. So it was a career fair interaction that kind of took me next. So that's one thing if we're talking later about like, if anything, I didn't really like going to career fairs and they can be overwhelming, but I will say they work sometimes.
Okay.
So anyone who's listening, like, this totally got hired out of a career fair interaction. And I was absolutely pessimistic, like walking through the building. It was just like, what a waste of my time. Like,
Yeah.
I'd rather just like be home playing video games. Like I remember walking in being like, whatever, I'll do it. Anyway, ended up talking to a former colleague of mine, good friend, my friend Jared Kellogg, who works at a company called Netcracker. This is the first company I started with out of school. So Netcracker is headquarters in Waltham, Massachusetts, a little bit outside of Boston. They are a telecommunications software vendor. So specifically, they sell anything and everything that a telco might need to run the kind of customer and resource facing side of their business. You think about Sprint or Verizon or Comcast or any of these big players, as well as any of the small telcos around the country. They all have a full ecosystem of software to help run their business, ranging from me logging onto a customer portal to order a phone or pay my bill, or all the software on the back end that helps them process those orders or complete invoices, or more importantly, for some of those companies, manage the resources in the real world. Like every telco has telephone poles and manholes and actual cables running into buildings to help provide service. They have a whole side of their business that's just dedicated to like making sure that stuff doesn't break. Netcracker was this company that sold all of that. Again, I had no idea this existed. Like, never in my life did I even once consider telecommunications software and, solution engineering for those companies as an option. But I remember submitting a resume to Netcracker, and then at the career fair, walked around and found their booth. And this guy, Jared, was working the booth, and just had a great conversation with him, like long, seemed super engaging. He's like a really energetic, captivating guy. And he kind of sold me on it totally. It was really that one-on-one interaction more than any research or like online digging that I did. It was just talking with him and him sort of illustrating like the personality traits that you need for this job and what it will look like in your first year. So that career fair interaction went really well. I had a good feeling I'd get hired after that. And that's exactly what happened. So he ended up being my mentor and the guy who trained me and the other guys who got hired with me right after. And that was like, the first year was completely a learning phase. So like that company, I really give them a ton of credit, and Jared specifically, and kind of his training team that they put together, because a lot of these software organizations now will hire and you need sort of a base level of experience or have been in the industry previously. So you're kind of hitting the ground running. Netcracker was willing to hire right out of school and hire people like me who have never even uttered the word telco before. Like we went in there completely green. I knew nothing about what the acronyms were, the technologies that they use in telcos. Like it was all new. But they dedicate the first like 4 months of your job to just like completely, 8-hour a day training in these workshops that you do to get sort of prepared to go and present in front of customers and actually be credible in that topic. So that company was huge for me. I spent 6.5 years there, I think.
Okay.
Was how long I ended up spending. I spent the first 2 years in Waltham, like in person, and then eventually was able to work remote and moved back to where my wife and I live now. And sort of, I'd go back and forth once a month to the office. But that's like a really important stop for me, both to learn the skills, but also like was just a great environment to sort of feel embedded in the company. I got hired with 3 other guys like my exact age. We hired another crop the next year. All of us were super tight. Like a lot of those guys were at my wedding. I've been to their weddings. Like it became a really good group of friends and guys who I still talk to all the time. And I think that's because we were all learning it together and starting from that place of like, we know nothing. We don't know what this is. Like, we want to kind of learn how to be good at this together and how to carve out a career. And I think all of us were in that same boat of like, we feel like we're intelligent, we're technically capable, like we can do something well, but we don't know what we should do well. And that was like a place to learn like, oh, hey, we can do this well and learn how to carve out a good career for ourselves that I think most of the guys who I worked with there are still in telco sales in some capacity, a decade plus later.
So that sounds very familiar to not what I encountered, but I had a lot of friends who went into either finance or to some form of sales. And depending on the companies that they went to, they had these cohorts that they started with that they were super like those training programs that you talk
Totally.
about. Some of them have like, they all have different names and they all have different outcomes or goals, like the future leaders programs or whatever they call them. And one of my really good friends had one of those and he swears by it. And it was the folks that he met, he still stays in touch with, and it was an amazing opportunity. So that's another good learning there is to, if that's a possibility to seek out, he swears by it. It was worth it.
Absolutely. So yeah, I was there for 6.5 years. I'd say in the last stretch of it, it started to splinter a little bit. Like the guys who we worked with, some people had left, some guys had moved to different departments. It was just not feeling the same way that it was in the beginning. Also, just felt like I needed a shake up, just kind of at that point in a career or at a work life. So that's when I made the jump over to Salesforce. I joined them in January of 2021. So I was firmly a COVID hire right in the middle of that phase, but very similar role and responsibility. Like it wasn't a pivot to a new industry. Salesforce is way bigger and a way, uh, it's more of an ocean that I feel like I'm a part of. Where Netcracker is not a small company. I think when I was there, it was 13,000 people or something like that. Like definitely large, multinational. But Salesforce is gargantuan, and
Yeah.
it felt that way when you joined it. When I joined, it was very much in a specific niche. Like Salesforce had just acquired a company called Velocity, all still in this weird little sub niche of telecommunication software sales. When I was joining, I was very much joining the Velocity group, like this industry communication specific sales group. From over the last 4 years after that, it's obviously been like rolled in more seamlessly and it's kind of become fused and part of the main core product. But when I was hired, it was because of those telco specific expertise that I developed. And it was definitely targeted and still am targeted at kind of selling and pitching to those companies and designing solutions for telcos specifically. So like I said, it'll be 12 years in June of kind of being in that space, but somehow that's become my niche. And at Salesforce, there's so much more to learn about. Like I've had to expand that footprint outside of telco, but that is still my bread and butter.
That's great. So now it's cool to hear your journey, but as someone who doesn't fully understand what a solutions engineer is, can you explain a little bit about what your role does and kind of a little bit behind the
Yes.
scenes of, yeah.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know, my wife and my parents still have no idea what I do and like what my job actually is. So I'll speak in the frame of telecommunications. This job is applicable in every vertical and many places outside of telco. This is not a telco specific job description, but these companies, these large telcos especially, have really complicated, intense software ecosystems to help run their business. I just mentioned like a couple of different subcategories within it: billing systems and customer portals and order processing software and network management software. And all these things need to tie together to give them some sort of smooth way of operating and processing orders through their system, like actually getting us internet and phone service delivered to either our house or to our cell phones. Now, those ecosystems are complicated. They have a ton of different software components. They're always from a bunch of different vendors. So there's customizations that have been done over time. There's custom APIs and integrations that get built. Like these are sensitive, delicate environments, I will say, that are still like mission critical and extraordinarily important for how these companies run their business. So when we go in as Netcracker or Velocity or Salesforce and try to help them upgrade parts of their software or solve a pain point. Like, for example, a telco might say, our order processing software is way out of date, and 1 out of every 5 orders we submit falls out. Customers don't get their service, they call and complain. This is obviously a problem for them. So our companies would come in. That's one example where we might say, hey, we have something that can replace your current software and do this better, fix that problem for you. But it's not as simple as just going in and saying, like, buy this and turn it on, and it's going to work. There's all these dependencies and customizations and integrations you have to take into account. So when you're designing these solutions, that's sort of where it falls to me. There's sales reps who go to these companies who are having those initial conversations, getting them interested, sort of educating them on what we do on a general basis. My job is like round two. I'm the technical guy who comes in after. I'm still very much a pre-sales resource. I should articulate that. But I'm the guy who comes in phase two of the sale and says, okay, let's talk about how this will actually work. Let me get an understanding of what systems you already have in place. Let me talk about how we'd integrate to those systems. Let me talk about and mostly demonstrate how our software will actually solve the pain point that you're having. So I'll be the one who goes in and builds the demo, and I'll show them, here's what your sales rep screen would look like, and here's why it's better than what you used to have. When we talk about solution engineering, I am helping build the vision for how this will actually solve their pain points for these big multi-million-dollar problems. And the cost of these implementations is also very high. They need that technical proof point. No one's going to buy on faith. Like they need demonstrations, they need proof of concepts. They will oftentimes in real robust processes send us hundreds of line items of documentation describing here's what we want your software to do, and you need to go through and show us and illustrate that it can do this. So it's kind of this job of balancing and being the bridge between the sales reps and being able to be that salesy face. I have to present in front of customers a lot. I have to be sort of personable and engaging and ready to have meetings or dinners or conversations in that way. But I also need to be able to turn around to the product side and the technical side of our companies and articulate what pain points we're solving for and what we need to do to fix that. So like it's that bridge between sale and customer and technical solution that helps, I guess, illustrate to the customers how this will actually work and help push the sale over the line. And like I said, that is a purely pre-sales role. Like there are other folks who are more dedicated to once we sign, they've put ink on the paper. Now there's different teams who go in and actually complete the project and like go through implementation, but more of a, okay, sale is done, move over and focus on the next one.
So you're all development. You're not.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm not on the implementation side. That's something we can talk about on the If I Knew Then segment. I didn't know how many different variations of this role there are on like a pre-sales versus post-sales versus, we can talk more about that later. But I am on that development and pre-sales side of, get us the sales over the line and help sell, and then be that, again, technical resource in the sales process, I guess.
I think you did a good job explaining it. I feel like I grasp what the role is because, so, I mean, it's very specific to like you're a solution engineer, but that role exists across everything. Like in my world too, like when we're talking about benefits, you have someone from a large consulting firm who comes in and is the salesy person. Then you have someone there who is either like maybe supporting on the actuarial side and can show you exactly what level of data they can provide. So that is super helpful. Okay. That's good. That's great. So now I think on to the namesake of this, If I Knew Then. So again, I always frame this as like, is there one piece or maybe multiple pieces of advice that you either wish you had earlier in your career or that you would give someone who's potentially looking to follow in your footsteps?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hard question. I'd say I'm long-winded, as you can probably tell from this podcast. So several different things. One, as I mentioned earlier, I think in the actual college phase, like some of the things that seem tedious can be useful. I think maybe I did know that, but didn't want to believe it, but I'll kind of reinforce, like I said, things like doing career fairs or going out and doing like just practice interviews or things like that were useful for me. I didn't feel like doing it, but they were useful. And I can undeniably say that those are things that got me opportunities and got me jobs, and might feel like just checking the box sometimes, but sometimes checking the box gets you where you want to go. So that was something that I probably wish I had a little more enthusiasm about at the time, that I was a little bit like, oh, whatever. The other thing I'll say, just once you're in this world of, again, I've only existed in, I would say, large to very large companies in a specific niche, but I hinted at this earlier. There's so much variation, like even for these specific technical roles in these companies, like there is a lot of niches you can find that you probably didn't know existed. And I think that's a theme we've talked about on this pod. We've talked when we're playing basketball, you and I have mentioned this to each other. Like not only was solution engineer or something I didn't know existed, I didn't know telco sales existed. I didn't know that after you sell it to them, there's business analysts who go on site and kind of do my job in person for the customer during implementation of the project, that have months long stays. Like never knew that job existed. There's so many ways to pivot in places like Salesforce too, of like, let's say I'm sort of disenchanted with the sales side. Well, you can turn into a training resource or a marketing resource, or you can become a post-sales analysis resource. Like there's dozens of variations that I could probably fit into if I wanted to pivot or move roles, that I think sometimes it might feel like you've got your eye on one target and it's like, this is the thing that I want. And if I don't get that, then what am I going to do? It's like, there's probably something right next to it that is close enough and that you can maybe use to pivot. Like I know plenty of guys who started with me as engineers and on the solutions side who pivoted to up and down the technical chain. I know guys who moved to the sales rep side and are pure account executives who are, they're working commissions and they're working quotas. That's like something I don't have to do. There's other guys who move back downstream, more into product development and like getting away from the customer. So I've seen folks who say, I want to be always in the customer. I want other guys who say, I want to never talk to the customer and don't want to be in that bridge kind of role. And you can move up and down. These big organizations, something I didn't know, again, if I knew then, like that they really provide you a lot of opportunity to move internally. And like if you're providing value and bring a good attitude, they want to keep you. So if you are like working at a job or you're in that kind of 5 year, 6 year stretch, you're like, do I want to keep doing this? Is this right for me, or do I want to pivot? It doesn't always have to mean jumping ship to a new organization. You can look internally too, and kind of see where you can pivot internally and test things out maybe before you make a bigger, more risky leap or whatever. So that's something I had no idea. I kind of figured like, stick to the path and that's all I can do, but it's not really true. And it ends up
Yeah.
being a lot more flexible than I thought.
I love that. I think I've always been a big proponent of transferable skills. And so what you're talking about is you do what you do well, but then you could find potentially other things that you're passionate about, and or just other opportunities. And I agree with you. Larger companies do provide that. I think it's also important, like your immediate network of even if it's not just outside of the company, internally, like who you work for, I think is important. Who you work with is important, and seeking that out regularly and finding opportunities and planting seeds, I think is so important, because you end up, even if it's kind of like what you're saying, tangential, like maybe it's related to what you're doing, but it opens up a completely new opportunity for you. You can use your skills that you've gained in this one space to do something else that you might not have known that you were passionate about. I love that. I think that's really
Yeah.
good advice.
I can add two more things because again, along
Sure.
with one is specific. You kind of mentioned it. I'm going to reiterate it. More important than what you do is who you're with. Again, I think probably many people have said that, but I talked about that team of guys I worked with in my first company, like all very good friends, like really made learning and kind of this overwhelming new industry feel consumable to me because it was just fun to go hang out with your friends at work. And also I've been very lucky to always have very good bosses. Like I've never had a bad boss. I've had great managers, and it's like might be the biggest deal, honestly.
Yeah,
Like it's just such an important part. So, seek out good people, attach yourself to good people, keep those networks alive. And the other thing I'll say is very specific and kind of weird if I knew then, because I really didn't know this then. If you are willing to present in front of customers and be a like public facing part of your company, you will be rewarded for that much more than I ever thought you would. Like I was always fine being on stage or performing or like presenting. And that's just sort of, I took it for granted. Turns out you get paid a lot of money to do that. And a lot of people do not, want to do that at all, like whatsoever, and are just dreading presenting in front of people. So if you feel like that's a skill of yours and you're comfortable on stage or presenting in front of large groups, you should try to harness that and like make your face seen and make yourself known there, because that is a very rewarded skill that I didn't really think was as valued as it is.
totally agree. Totally agree. All right. Thank you very much. Before we wrap up, is there well, actually, what's next for you? Do you have any future goals or?
I'm good where I am right now. Been here for I just crossed the 5 year mark at Salesforce. I plan to continue in this role. It's such a it's a transitional kind of time at Salesforce where again, this is getting too far in the weeds, but there's a lot of product changes and a lot of like new innovation, especially on the AI side. So I'm just trying to keep up to speed with that. And at the moment, happy where I am and kind of no plans to change or update at the moment. I'm pretty good in my lane.
Awesome. That's great. Anything else you want to share or plug before I let you go?
No, I'm all set. This is awesome, man. I really appreciate you having me on. And for anyone who's listening, just know that Anthony was shooting the hell out of the ball last night and just, just totally balling out. So I'll see you next time we're on the court for sure.
All right. Thank you very much for doing this, Ben. I really appreciate it. I think this is
Yeah,
great.
dude, definitely. Thanks.